and welcome to the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections Drainage Review 101 and 2021 Stormwater Code Update presentation. My name is Eric Drips and I'm a drainage reviewer here with SDCI. Thank you for joining us. So Drainage Review 101, this slideshow training is intended to give an overview of drainage review requirements for SDCI applications and not get into too much detail specifically for large or complex projects. I would try to cover as much as I can here. However, every project can be unique and may present questions that will not be answered here. We are going to follow up with some Q&A sessions, so you will likely see them in an email if you're signed up on our listserv, and we'll do a live online session where you can answer some more specific questions and hear some other concerns or questions from others who attend the sessions. And as always, feel free to contact us at sidesewerinfo@seattle.gov or 206-684-5362. We can answer any general questions through the email or the phone line that way as well. Our Stormwater Code website is currently under construction to make updates for the updated code. Once we do get all the updated information on the website, we will be adding a tour to this presentation. So just stay tuned for that tour of the website. Probably the easiest way to get there is just to do an online search for Stormwater Code Seattle, and we will start the tour when we get it updated. So for our agenda today, we will look at thresholds first. So what even triggers drainage review? We'll look at what the thresholds are for drainage review and some of the other requirements. Preliminary drainage review is for master use permits. So we'll do some discussion about when we require a preliminary drainage review for a master use permit. Approved points of discharge. This is a key part of your project, and we'll kind of go over into some detail about approved points of discharge and where you'll find that for your project. On-site stormwater management. What is it? When is it required? Infiltration, feasibility, and testing. OSM, or on-site stormwater management, BMPs, or best management practices overview. We'll get into some of the specifics of the different BMPs that you can use for on-site stormwater management. And finally, we'll look at standard plans and some examples of some simple projects that can serve as, kind of a general overview of what we're looking for to approve projects for drainage review. So all the information is going to be available on our Stormwater Code page. All the documents will be available as well as this presentation. So let's start with review thresholds. So thresholds are based on new plus replaced hard surface. So I'll just start with a couple definitions here. So hard surface includes impervious surface, which is roofs, pavements, walkways, any surface by which most of stormwater will run off. And it also includes vegetative roofs and permeable pavement. So that's kind of a common question about permeable pavement. So that's still considered a hard surface and still is considered towards the thresholds. So replaced hard surface is another common question. Replaced hard surface would include the replacement of any existing hard surface down to the base for pavement and foundation for buildings. So for example, a grind and overlay for a pavement, you're not getting down to the base of the pavement, so that wouldn't count as replacement. And then for a building, if you're just replacing the roof or the second story of the building, but you're keeping the remaining portion of the building, that portion of the building doesn't count as replaced hard surface and thus doesn't count towards the threshold. So here's a overview chart of the different requirements based on various thresholds for projects. And just to start over here at the left, side sewer review or side sewer conflict review could potentially apply to any project for any level of development. So even if you're under the drainage review threshold, there may be some, say there might be a public main on property that your small addition might be in conflict with, or there might be another property side sewer that crosses your property that that small addition might be in conflict with. So regardless of the level of new and replaced hard surface, there may be some side sewer conflicts that could occur. So the main drainage review threshold is greater than or equal to 750 square feet of new plus replaced hard surface. So once you hit that threshold, so say you have a 400 square foot addition and a 350 square foot driveway or greater, then that's going to trigger drainage review, and we're going to require the 2 standard sheets. The small pilot infiltration test for no approved point of discharge. So if your site has no off-site point of discharge, and I'll get into a little bit more detail when we go into approved points of discharge, just putting that information on your standard sheets. So for on-site stormwater management, it depends. For most projects, it's going to be greater than or equal to 1,500 square feet of new and replaced hard surface. And for a project where it was recently subdivided, and I'll get into, in these next slides, we'll get into more of the detail what that means. But for these larger projects, these are the thresholds for 2,000 and 5,000, where flow control and water quality may apply. For any project greater than or equal to 5,000 square feet of new plus replaced hard surface, a professional engineer is required to stamp and sign the drainage and construction stormwater control plans. So this table here is a little bit more detail about the different thresholds for flow control and water quality. And also we are comparing here where the 2016 code requirements are and the upcoming adopted code of 2021 code. So there are some changes occurring, and I'll kind of go over this briefly just to highlight some of the ones that have changed. Again, we're not really trying to get into a lot of complex projects, but just want to give you this overview here. So one of the big ones is that flow control, the combined sewer basement, has been reduced from the current threshold of 10,000 square feet to a new threshold of 5,000 square feet. And the flow control for creek basins has been increased from 2,000 to 5,000. So really the 2021 code is meant to be more consistent for when we require these flow control requirements. Small lake basins are still 2,000, so is capacity constrained. Single family residential definition has changed. So flow control and water quality are not required for single family projects. So single family projects are a single family home in a single family zoned property. So a large single family project where the new plus replaced hard surface is greater than or equal to 5,000 square feet would then be considered a parcel-based project. So even if it's just one single family house in a single family zone, if it's more than 5,000 square feet, then the project becomes a parcel-based project, and it could be subject to water quality and flow control requirements. So quickly, just want to go over some of the grading permit thresholds that have changed. We have updated the grading code as well, and some of the thresholds has changed. I do want to clarify before going over these thresholds that for a building permit that is including grading work, excavation, all of these thresholds under the construction permit, you don't need a separate grading permit. These grading permits are typically issued for projects that aren't related to a construction permit, or potentially if it's work being done before the construction permit. So say there's going to be some mass grading done on a site before the actual building permit, but the actual grading work is typically going to be included in the building permit. So the land disturbing activity for a grading permit threshold has been reduced from 1 acre to 5,000 square feet. The new plus replaced hard surface from 2,000 square feet to 750 square feet. That's to bring it in line with our drainage review thresholds that any construction permit would fall under, so to make it consistent with the grading permit as well. In addition, if you're adding extracted groundwater, say for dewatering wells for construction or remediation of a contaminated site. So let's talk a little bit about thresholds for preliminary drainage review. Again, this is for master use permits and when we require drainage review for those applications. So the 2021 manual has some clarification on preliminary drainage review and different requirements that may occur at the master use permit stage for more complex design review. So all subdivisions, short lots, and lot boundary adjustments and unit lot subdivisions will all get drainage review. But for most of those projects, we're just going to be making sure that all proposed lots have adequate access to drainage and sanitary utilities. But in some cases, the project will have to provide what is referred to as a preliminary drainage review process. And in the manual, we clarify for which projects this will be required for. So for the preliminary drainage review, we would require a preliminary drainage plan and a drainage report. And it's clarifying which types of master use permits will require the preliminary drainage control review. And the requirements for shared drainage facilities in subdivisions and short plots has also been clarified. So if you have a fairly large subdivision or sometimes a smaller subdivision with multiple lots that are sharing drainage facilities, drainage review may be required at the master use permit level so that that overall drainage plan can be established before we get the individual building permits in for review. Here's a little bit more clarifying information about preliminary drainage review. Again, the master use permits that will always require preliminary drainage review include subdivisions and short plats, lot boundary adjustments, and unit lot subdivisions. And again, typically we're just looking at those applications for review of access to stormwater and sanitary utilities. However, depending on the size, the nature of the application, we may be requiring preliminary drainage review at the master use permit stage. And that, again, is clarified in the new stormwater manual. And you will receive your preliminary assessment report will identify that information. So if you have a master use permit application that will trigger drainage review, preliminary drainage review, in a sense that we're going to be looking for showing things like flow control or water quality treatment, then that will be shown on your preliminary assessment report, at least based on the information that is provided at that point. So the types of master use permits that may require preliminary drainage review is when you're proposing disturbance within an environmentally critical area, such as a steep slope. Not all of these master use permits will require drainage review. In fact, probably most of them will not. Typically, we're only going to be looking at these projects if there's a known drainage issue in the area, or if the development of the ECA in some way will prevent access to utilities for stormwater or sanitary for that master use permit. So let's talk a little bit about approved points of discharge for your project. So where do you connect? So this is one of the main requirements that we enforce during drainage review is where your stormwater, subsurface drainage, and sanitary points of connection are. Where are you connecting that for your project? On the preliminary assessment report, all of these approved points of discharge are going to be identified. If the project didn't require a PAR, or if you're unable to find that information, again, feel free to contact us. We can help identify those approved points of discharge. So every project varies. It varies depending on the area of the city that you're in, the size of your project, the available infrastructure in the property frontage. So it really depends on the project and the location of it. So for stormwater, it is going to either be the public storm system, curb alley discharge, public combined sewer, or on-site infiltration dispersion. And some of these projects could require a mainline to peak extended so that they could connect to the public storm system, or for sanitary, if there's not available sanitary, that a sanitary main might need to be extended as well. But that, again, it really depends on the project. So the intent of this information here is just to make you aware that this is an important part about drainage review, identifying and clearly showing your points of discharge on the plans. The change from the 2016 code to the 2021 code is that the formally combined and these is no longer an approved point of stormwater discharge. So now we're going to talk about on-site stormwater management, or typically is abbreviated as OSM. And on-site stormwater management are BMPs, which are best management practices that are used on the project site to reduce the impact of the stormwater discharge from the site. It could be through treatment of that stormwater. It could be through retaining the stormwater on site or reducing the amount of stormwater that would be going into the public drainage system. So we're going to get into what it takes to meet on-site stormwater management for your project and discuss a little bit of the specifics about the best management practices, which again we'll get into more detail in a separate session. So on-site stormwater management can be met with two approaches. So there is the on-site list approach, which is really the most common, especially for smaller projects, and the on-site performance standard. So the on-site list approach is a way to meet your the on-site stormwater management requirement by selecting the BMP in the highest category, and then the BMPs are by and large mostly pre-sized so that there's no calculations that need to be done. Really, you're just identifying the amount of area, selecting the BMP in the highest that's feasible, and the calculator is going to provide you with a specific size that needs to be shown for that BMP on the plan. The on-site performance standard will require an engineer to model the BMPs in a continuous rainfall runoff model, and then the BMPs can be selected without having to go through the list. They just need to meet the specifics of the modeling requirements for the performance standard. And again, that's less common and requires an engineer to do that analysis. But either is acceptable to meet on-site stormwater management. So here's just a brief overview of some of the things that have changed in the new 2021 code. The overall process has not changed. You're still selecting the BMP in the highest category that's feasible, and you can't select one in a lower category until you've clearly shown and demonstrated that the higher categories are not feasible. Some of the changes, there's some new and revised in feasibility criteria, which I won't get into all the detail here, but that can be looked at in Appendix C for the on-site stormwater management and feasibility criteria. There's also the on-site list has been revised to have categories 1 through 5 instead of previously 1 through 4. There's a new BMP for sidewalk trail projects with a compost amended strip, so that's a brand new best management practice. And all of the revisions are being built into the new on-site list calculator, so you don't have to understand all the changes that were made. We're trying to provide you with the tools that have been updated for the new code so that you can meet the requirements for your project. So this table is to show all of the BMPs for a parcel-based project using the list approach, and I'm just going to highlight a few of the big changes that have been made for the 2021 code. So for infiltration and dry wells, it's been clarified that for non-roof surfaces, so that would include any driveways or walkways, ground level patios, those surfaces do not need to be evaluated for infiltration trenches or dry wells. They can be. You certainly could collect a driveway and discharge it to an infiltration trench, but you're not required to. So that surface could then go down to category 2, and you could propose, say, permeable pavement surface for the driveway instead of first having to demonstrate why a trench or a dry well is not feasible. So, and then as mentioned before, there's a new category 2 BMP, the sidewalk trail compost amendment strip is a new BMP that can be evaluated. The other big change is that for category 3, non-infiltrating bioretention, vegetated roofs, and rainwater harvesting have been moved to category 4. So when you're moving down the on-site list approach, you would have to first demonstrate that the dispersion BMPs are not feasible before going down to category 4 and say proposing a non-infiltrating bioretention for a roof sizing. There's some changes to the rainwater harvesting BMP as well. You can see that in number highlighted in number 5. I'm not going to get into too much detail about that, but feel free to contact us if you have specific questions and you're considering rainwater harvesting BMP for that. Also remove newly planted to acknowledge that both new and retained trees count towards the on-site list. So it's basically just we have one single BMP that includes newly planted trees and the retained trees as well. So for single family projects as well, there's some similar changes that have been made. Again, infiltration and dry wells can be used for non-roof hard surfaces, but not required. The compost amendment strip has been added. The bioretention and vegetated roofs have been moved to category 4, and we've updated rainwater harvesting and the trees BMP as well. So pretty similar changes. So again, we've updated the on-site list approach calculator so to help in your project to make sure that you're meeting the requirement for on-site stormwater management. So that's going to be updated on our website. Again, whenever you start a new project, please check on the website to get the most, always download the workbook directly from our Stormwater Code website, just to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version. I suspect that with the new code, we will probably be making more updates than we have been doing. So if you could just download that most recent version from the website whenever you are starting a project. Use the preliminary assessment report. There's going to be some new language in there that we've updated because of the new code. So refer to the preliminary assessment report for requirements for flow control or on-site stormwater management. If it's for a master use permit, as we were discussing earlier, if we're going to require a preliminary drainage review, and use that preliminary assessment report to fill out your on-site stormwater management workbook. So for all of your approved points of discharge, flow control, water quality, type of project, all of that information will be available in your preliminary assessment report to copy over to your on-site stormwater management workbook. Be sure to enable content. It is a Microsoft Excel workbook, and it has programming involved that requires you to enable content. If you don't enable it, the first time you open up the workbook, it will ask you to enable content, and just make sure that you enable content. Otherwise, the workbook won't create the new surface tabs. It won't function properly. And again, if you're having some sort of issue, feel free to contact us. We can try to help you out and troubleshoot what's going on with the workbook. Another recommendation that we have is just if you're able to combine as many surfaces as possible for clarity. Some of the examples that could involve is, say you have a walkway in the front of the house, a driveway in the rear of the house, a patio as well. instead of breaking that up into 3 surfaces, you could potentially say if you're proposing all 3 surfaces as permeable pavement surface, you could identify them as all one surface. So your surface description would be driveway, patio, walkway, and your BMP would be permeable pavement surface. So you could combine those as long as they're using the same BMP. So the same would be true for a roof surface. If you have 4 downspouts and all downspouts are going to a single fire retention facility, you don't have to break the roof up into 4 downspout areas. You could just show one roof surface, label it as surface 1 or 2, and showing it going to that bioretention planter. As long as it's going to a single bioretention planter, that would be okay. Okay, so here I'm going to go through a brief overview of the on-site stormwater management calculator and how to use it. So to reiterate, you always want to download the most recent version from our website. This is a draft version of the new 2021 workbook that will be soon available for you, but the new workbook will always be available on the Stormwater Code website, and you always want, whenever you start a project, you want to go to the website and always download the most recent version. So once you download the workbook, which is available from the Stormwater Code website, you always want to enable content. There are some programming involved in the workbook that's going to require you to do this, otherwise the workbook will not work properly. So we want to enable content. So the workbook is organized into various tabs. So the first tab is going to be the instructions tab. There's going to be an overview for how to use the workbook, as well as some diagrams about how these different on-site stormwater BMPs and hard surfaces are organized on the plans. So it's a good introduction to how to use it and what we need to see on the drainage plan to represent all the on-site stormwater management requirements. The project summary sheet, this is going to be where you enter all your information for your project, and it's also going to be the sheet that once it's completed, you're going to put onto your drainage and wastewater control plan. So you start with some project information, address, project number, your project type, so whether it's a single family or a parcel-based project. So this next section would be the summary area, where you enter all the site areas for the project, including your total site area, the new plus replaced hard surface for the project, and the replaced lawn and landscaping. That's going to be any disturbed area that is not going to become hard surface. Undisturbed and protected site area, typically that'll be your environmentally critical areas or tree protection areas. The next section is going to be your site information. So all this information should be available on your preliminary site report that you received for the project. That's going to detail the approved point of discharge, wastewater discharge that you'll fill in on this summary sheet. There's some additional information about flow control, environmental critical areas, water quality treatment that needs to be filled out. The infiltration information needs to be completed, whether or not it's required for your project to investigate for infiltration investigation. You still got to fill out this information. If infiltration investigation is not required, you would say no, and site is mapped as such. The on-site stormwater management, whether you're using the list approach or the performance standard, needs to be selected here. And then this next section is the number of surface areas, whether you have roof areas or other surfaces areas, typically a driveway or a walkway, patio, etc. So in order to start your roof areas or other surface areas, you enter the number of areas and then hit enter. And once you hit enter, it's going to automatically create your surface tab for that surface. When you've created that tab, you'll go over to the tab at the bottom for surface 1. Select whether it's a roof area, enter the surface area, enter a description, and then you're going to go down to the bottom portion, which will lead you through the list approach to select the BMP that you're going to use for that surface. You have to go from category 1 to category 2 and so on until you find a BMP that is feasible. And for any infeasible BMP, you need to select a valid infeasibility criteria. Now, once you complete this workbook, you are going to have to print the entire thing and upload a copy of the entire PDF to your project. The reviewer is going to be checking to make sure that if you say a BMP is infeasible, that the infeasibility criteria is justified. Once you select a BMP, then you come down here and say use BMP. I'm just going to jump down to, because I didn't have infiltration. So you can jump down, but if you submit a workbook like this where the category 2 and 3 is not filled out, that would be a correction. But once you get down to category 4 and say use BMP, it's going to say to go to BMP sizing. Go to the BMP sizing tab, select your BMP again. Select the variables for the configuration, and it's going to give you a size for that BMP. And once you complete that BMP sizing tab, it's going to automatically show on the summary tab for your sizing, and you're going to use that size to put that BMP onto the plan. The only other tab that is of importance is the Memorandum of Drainage Control tab. This is not editable. You put all your information in the summary sheet, and then this Memorandum of Drainage Control exhibit then goes into your Memorandum of Drainage Control legal document as an exhibit. This is automatically populated based on what you put on your summary sheet. Feel free to give us any questions that you might have when you're using it. If you have any trouble, you can always contact your reviewer and or email sitesewer.info@seattle.gov. We'd be happy to help you. If you want to upload attach a copy of the workbook, we could try to troubleshoot it with you. And for this slide, you just need to click to advance the slide, unlike previous slides that automatically did it. So just click to advance the slide. Okay, so now we'll get into the standard plans, the construction and stormwater control and drainage and wastewater control plans. Give a few examples and see how it all comes together for what we need to see in your submitted plan set. So again, here's the two standard plans, the drainage and wastewater control plan, or the DWC plan, and the standard construction stormwater control plan, or the CSC plan, are the two standard plans that are required for every project. Again, if you have a professional engineer on your project, they don't have to provide our actual standard plan templates. They can use their own stamped and signed plans, but all the information that's on the standard plans needs to be provided. Here's our updated construction and stormwater control plan, just to give you a brief overview of this. As of this recording, the updated plan is not yet available on our Stormwater Code website, but it will be shortly. And again, similar to the on-site stormwater workbook, we always require that you check the Stormwater Code site for the updated version when you're starting a new project. Just to give you a brief overview of it, we have up here in the top left corner the general notes. Here we have the 19 elements that need to be addressed for each of the each project. So this gives you this is to mirror the checklist that's in the stormwater manual. There's a soil amendment detail here, and then the remaining construction and stormwater control best management practice details are up here as well. And then here's your plan view where you're going to show your site plan with all the required construction and stormwater control BMPs shown. Here's the updated drainage and wastewater control plan. So the biggest change from the previous version is we used to have a set of commonly used on-site stormwater management BMP details up here on the detail sheet. What will happen now is you'll select only the details that you're actually using, and you'll pull those over onto the details portion of the standard plan. Over here is the on-site stormwater management calculator. That's where you're going to complete the workbook in the Excel format and then copy that over to the plan when it's complete. And there's some other various drainage and side sewer standard notes. This right here is the as-built notes section. So when you actually go to construct these best management practices and the side sewers, the drainage and wastewater control plan, the approved plan, is going to serve as your as-built. And this is the section that will be used for the as-built. It's not something that is to be filled out during plan review. We also have some standard abbreviations. That's a new part of this standard plan. So whenever you're abbreviating on the plan for storm side sewer, sanitary side sewer, the public storm mains, then we are going to require that the standard abbreviations be used so that it's more standardized and easier to follow. So as I said on the previous slide, we have a new standard detail sheet that you're going to only be pulling over the standard details that you're using on the drainage and wastewater control plan. So this is going to be a separate PDF on the stormwater management or the Stormwater Code website. It will also be part of the AutoCAD version of the drainage and wastewater control plan. It will be off of the title block portion, and you'll just be able to pull the relative details over to your drainage and wastewater control plan. It's organized by the different categories, so you can see we have category 1 and 2, and then on the next slide we'll show you the rest. And here we also have category 4 and 5 as well. We're still working on category 3, but which will be the dispersion BMPs, but those will be available as well. And just to reiterate one more time, you just pull over the relevant details that you're going to use. One particular thing to note on this plan is for your bioretention planter, if you're for the non-infiltrating one, if you're showing a slope side detail or a vertical side detail, you'll want to pull the correct one over to your sheet. So here's an example of a project to kind of highlight what we need to see for the project. So what we're looking at is the plan view of the drainage and wastewater control plan, and a portion of the on-site stormwater management workbook summary sheet as well. So the summary sheet, this is the bottom of the summary sheet where all the different BMPs are listed. So we need to, on the plan, again, it needs to be to scale. So the scale needs to be identified, the north arrow needs to be identified, The street needs to be identified. So as you can see, this is 31st Avenue South. You need to show all of your new and replaced hard surfaces. They need to be clearly labeled with a surface number that's consistent with the on-site stormwater summary sheet. So if we look on the summary sheet, we can see surface 1. It's described as roof deck 2. And if we look at the plan, we can see surface 1 is the southern portion of the roof for the building here. So it's clearly labeled, and you want to make sure it's all to scale so that the area listed on the summary sheet is consistent with the scaled version of the plan. That is something that we check when we're reviewing these projects. So, and then surface 2 is identified clearly, the amount of area, where the downspouts are located are shown. That would also need to be shown where the downspouts are, where the downspouts are going. So the downspouts need to be shown connecting to the BMP that's consistent with the summary sheet. So if we look at surface 1 again, it's going to non-infiltrating bioretention number 1. That's clearly shown on the plans, and that also needs to be labeled as bioretention number 1. The dimensions of the bioretention need to be shown, the inside dimensions, so that we can verify that the sizing shown on the plans matches the required minimum sizing on the summary sheet. For the most part, the sizing for bioretention needs to be at a minimum what the minimum size is on the summary sheet. Depending on the requirements for the project, we may allow them to be larger, but for the most part, the requirement is that the size of the planter needs to meet the size that's shown on the summary sheet. But again, there are situations where we might allow the bioretention planter to be oversized. So other things that are being shown on the plans is that the overflows from the bioretention need to be clearly shown to connect to the approved point of discharge. For this specific project, the approved point of discharge is the combined sewer. So for a combined sewer project, all the downspouts need to be, the overflows from the BMPs or downspouts that are not being mitigated or any surface collection needs to go connect to a catch basin before combining with the sanitary sewer at the property line. So the stormwater and the sanitary need to be separated to the property line, and that's being clearly shown on the plans. The subsurface drainage, if proposed, needs to be also shown on the plans. We can see that is clearly labeled in the blue line. The red line on the plans. So the footing drains also need to be shown to be connected to the approved point of discharge. Again, since this is a combined sewer, the approved point of discharge for subsurface drainage is also to the combined sewer. Those need to connect to a catch basin before combining with any of the other surface drainage water lines, and that's being clearly shown on the plans. So all of the BMPs are shown. We are also seeing that there's permeable pavement surface. Those are being clearly labeled and identified in the on-site stormwater management sheet. And also the new and replaced trees are also being shown. So for new and retained trees, actually it's just trees now is the BMP for the 2021 code. So the common and species needs to be identified, the location needs to be identified, and you need to verify that those trees are within 20 feet of the hard surface that they are mitigating. So that's an example of a drainage and wastewater control plan. There certainly can be some specifics that may apply to your project that also needs to be shown. But for the most part, we need to clearly show the approved points of discharge, the hard surfaces, and how the hard surfaces are connected to BMPs that are properly sized to the approved point of discharge. Here's just another example where they, again, are identifying the different surfaces by number that are consistent with the summary sheet, clearly showing the dimensions for the BMPs on the plans and clearly showing all of the overflow connections to the approved point of discharge. This is, again, another connection to the combined sewer. But if, say, for example, the approved point of discharge is to the curb weep, it needs to be shown to the curb. If it is, say, a curb weep discharge, then the footing drains also, if proposed, will also need to be shown to the approved point of discharge, which is likely going to be on-site infiltration if the drainage discharge point is to curb weep. Sometimes for projects where it's a little bit harder to show the surfaces and surface numbers, this is just an example of what an applicant has done to not confuse the overall plan with surface limits. So on the overall plan, they're going to show more of the specifics of the pipe and where the pipes are going, where the BMPs are, but they've provided a key plan just to show the overall where the different surfaces and BMPs are located. So it's another option that could be helpful for your project. This is just another example of a larger building where the surfaces are being identified. This is showing the limits of a vegetated roof versus the areas for amenity space and the non-structure area for the ground level pavement. So thanks so much for joining us today. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us again at sidesewerinfo@seattle.gov or 206-684-5362. And we'll be following up with a question and answer live session where we'll be able to answer your questions live. Stay tuned for information for how to attend that Q&A session. And also there's going to be another slideshow presentation to focus a little bit more on the specific BMPs that have changed and been updated for the 2021 code. And that will be available on our Stormwater Code website as well. So thanks again for joining us. And as always, feel free to reach out to us. We know that all of these projects have their specific challenges, and we're here to help and answer questions as the process goes along. So thanks again. Have a great day.